Hello everyone, this is Flatflare from the Adventures of Shadowpon 3 and Flatflare. Today we get to go into an adventure that is very dangerous for both of these ponies. Here we go. It was a wonderful morning in Ponyville, and Flatflare woke up and Shadowpon was cuddling her, and still snoring as Flatflare tried to get out of bed, but was yanked back by Shadowpon as Shadowpon mumbled, "No, you stay, Flatflare giggled and cuddled Shadowpon. A few moments later, Shadowpon woke up and looked down, and there was Flareflare, fake sleeping, and Shadowpon smiled as she shook Flareflare awake, and Flareflare fell out of bed, and Shadowpon laughed. "Oh, silly Flareflare, you make me laugh so hard sometimes," Shadowpon said, laughing in bed. "Hardy har har har. Very funny, Shadow," Fireflare said, grunting, getting up off the floor, fixing her messed up hair, and putting her sunglasses on. Later, they both went downstairs and sat at the table as Firefly's mother was putting food on their plates. "Why, good morning, you two. Did you sleep well?" Firefly's mother said, smiling at both of them. "Good," Fireflare said. "Wonderfully," Shadowpon said. They both ate their food and helped clean off the table and clean the dishes. After breakfast, they were walking through town and said hello to their friends as they were walking together. When they got to the tree when they first met at, they sat next to each other and looked up at the beautiful afternoon sky. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Shadow Flareflare said. "Yes, it is, my dear Flareflare. Beautiful day it is to be sitting next to your special pony," Shadowpon said with a smile. "Yep." "Hey, Shadow," Flareflare said. "Yes, Flareflare?" Shadowpon said. "I was wondering if you wanted to go on an adventure kinda like Daring Do," Flareflare said. "Well, we are the kind of ponies that do something she would during her adventures," Shadowpon said. They both sat there talking, but off to the distance, there was a silhouette watching both of them. When they both were sleeping, the silhouette bagged them and took them away. When Flareflare woke up, she was tied up to a chair in a dark room. "Whoa! Where am I?" Flareflare said.
You are here because I am evil, and so basically I kidnapped you and your friend and brought you here because I torture little ponies for fun.
The disembodied voice said. "Pfft, you don't sound so tough. Why don't you show yourself so I can kick your butt?" Flareflare said, grunting, trying to break free.
Oh, don't even try to break free, because the room you are in has a trap, and it will trigger a reaction if you even.
The disembodied voice said as his head was pinned down. "Now tell me where she is, and we'll be on our merry way," Flareflare said, holding the unknown assailant's head down.
But how did you?
He said. "I used to be a royal guard for the princess. I know moves you don't even know before. Now, where is she?" Flareflare said, pinning the assailant's head down harder.
Second floor, on the right. No, please let me go.
The assailant said, but Flareflare was already gone, and he pressed a button, and the timer started counting down as Flareflare flew to Shadowpon and untied her. "Come on, we gotta go," Flareflare said. "Agreed," Shadowpon said as Shadow ran outside and took off flying, and Flareflare ran outside, but the temple exploded as she took off and got hit, and Flareflare lost control and went into the trees and hit the ground hard as she went unconscious. Unknown to Shadowpon, she did not know Flareflare wasn't with her. When Shadowpon arrived back in Ponyville, everyone was there in Town Square, looking at her in disbelief. They heard they both were kidnapped, and then that's when Shadowpon noticed that Flareflare wasn't with her. "Where's Flareflare, Shadow?" Shadow's mother said. "I don't know. All I remember is the temple exploding, and I thought she got out with me, but oh my, she's gone. I think she didn't make it, everyone," Shadowpon said as she soaked her head in shame, and everyone gasped, and Flareflare's parents started tearing up. But unknown to every pony, that Flareflare was still alive, but unconscious, but alive. That night, Shadowpong was on her bed, looking at a picture of Flare Flare as she was crying. Oh, Flare Flare, I wish you were here with me. It's my fault you died, Shadow said, crying. The next day in the forest, Flare Flare woke up. She grunted as she shook off the rubble off her head, off her and her wings. She then got up, and she had been dizzy because the last night was a daze of her being unconscious. She walked onto the road, but she walked very slowly. But later she was on top of a mountain, and she collapsed in exhaustion and blacked out and laid there panting. Back in Ponyville, the town gathered, and the mayor got up and said, "Today we gather to honor a heroic pony that loved music and built her dream to her fullest. And she was the bravest to sacrifice herself for her friend to live. And now we know that she's in a better place, and we will remember the best of her and how heroic and brave a pony she was." Everyone had nothing to say. They were all tearing up, just thinking in the moment. Shadowpon said nothing either. To her, she lost a very special pony in her life she would cherish forever. Now she was gone. Shadowpon went home and went into her room and laid there crying as her mother walked in. I'm sorry, Shadowpon, about what happened to Flare Flare, but if it wasn't for her bravery, you would have died with her, her mother said. I know, but she's more than a friend. She was my special pony. I loved her, Mom. She did too. Shadowpon said, laying there in tears. I know, sweetie, but for now, don't think about it, and eventually you're going to have to move on, or you'll end up in a depression like the one you are in right now, Shadowpon's mother said as she left Shadow's room. Later that day, there was a big bear attacking and tearing up Ponyville. Every pony was running in panic, and others tried to control it, but it broke all the unicorn's spells. Then, off in the distance, came a voice. Hey, ugly face! The bear looked down to the top of the hill as the figure came to, and she put on her sunglasses and said, I suggest you pick on someone your own size, Flare Flare said. The bear ran after Flare Flare. Flare Flare stood her ground, and every pony was surprised that Flare Flare was alive. As the bear reached the top of the hill, Flare Flare kicked his face with her hind hooves, and the bear blacked out and fell in front of Flare Flare. Flare Flare stood on top of the bear and said, Citizens of Ponyville, when you see a big bear tearing up the city, attack, not run, and scream like little fillies, because this crap's getting old, like Granny Smith old, Flare Flare said as she walked down, and Shadowpon ran up to her and hugged her. Oh, Flare Flare, I thought I'd never see you again, Shadowpon said. Oh, really? You should have checked on me when I wasn't dead, Shadowpon, Flare Flare said, punching Shadowpon aside and walking away. That's not the Flare Flare I remembered, Shadowpon said. To be continued.